Episode 14, Unification Party, coming at you from the Unification headquarters. Co-host Adrian Blizzard.
Hello.
Let's get going. Let's not waste any time. Tell
Oh
us what's
my
happening.
God. Buckle in. I got an update on some Canadian politics for you, my friend, like you're never going to believe. As a matter of fact, I'm being very sarcastic because it's in fact Groundhog Day. We got like a little bit of like multiple things that is like new stuff, but along the exact same lines of things we've covered before. Like some of the good news is the Chinese ambassador has come thinking like, yo, let's work together, Canada. We could do a thing that would help you fight this American trade war, like the trade war, and it would actually be great for you guys. Like it's not wild. Like let's do that. So that's great. Things are going great with China. I mean, isn't that that seems to be par for the course.
Well, we get one supermaster. I guess we're going to decide as Canadians together through election and whatnot whether we want our master to be the U.S. of A. or the Chinese Communist Party.
Party. Yeah, I was always under the old adage of the devil kind of go with. But that's just me. Call me old fashioned. Call me old fashioned. There was some big talk this morning. A couple of places were reporting about the likelihood is not low that Pierre could lose his seat. I think that was just kind of a lot of more filler fluff. Like it didn't seem to have like anything of real substance.
There's a Canadian YouTuber. I can't remember his name, but he's got a kind of a studious looking fellow, youngish, got curlyish hair on top, glasses. Doesn't matter what his name is. I was listening to him today, and he was talking about Pierre being, and he was saying that he had been, the only reason I'm giving this guy any credence is that he has been for the last bunch of weeks in Canada, Nepean, like door knocking. And he was saying that that was preposterous. And if anything, the makeup of Carleton is largely rural. He indicated that any of those polls may have been done in select locations in Carleton for Polyev. But he said, if anything, where he was door knocking, there was a major rise, and it was a lot closer, even in Carney's riding. So he flipped a switch on it, saying Carney is the one who should be worried about his seat.
I believe you're talking about Wyatt Claypool from the National Telegraph on YouTube channel.
That's exactly who I'm talking about.
Yes, and he seems to be one of the closest kind of like microscope kind of lenses into like that particular issue, aside from the mainstream media. Like nobody else is really kind of countering it. And
like the fact that he's there. He's actually there, boots on the ground. Yeah. So
no, and he's knowledgeable. Like he's what you would call, and I don't think he would be offended. Like a political junkie, political nerd, even would probably not offend him, right? Like he's super into Canadian politics, and I think he even ran for office in Calgary.
Yeah, and I think not only is he a nerd or whatever, he's also, I would even probably say he's as close to being an insider as, he seems to have a lot of connections, and like you said, as he ran before, and he's definitely a pro voice, so he seems to know what's going on.
From his take, it actually seems to be Mr. Carney who has more, like he's sucking in resources from more, like around ridings around there, and
exactly.
But, that is something that nobody really talks about. Like just on a complete side note, but like for a leader, like it almost kind of like I guess with the pros and cons of being in a leader's riding. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you never even, it's not like you see the other guy anyways, like if he's not the leader, but it's almost like you kind of expect to be neglected a little bit. Like, Dad's got other things to do. Like, we get it. Like,
well, and he's the prime minister.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So, so who knows, right? I mean, it does seem to be the polls are kind of like closing in too. And from all different walks, like not just like, certain polls, like everybody seems to be, it's turning out to be more of a knife fight than people thought.
Yeah, but I don't understand, unless I don't understand math. Let's say put them both liberals and conservatives at 40%, 38, whatever they're saying, they're tied or wherever they're at. I still don't see how that translates into anything other than a loss for the conservatives.
Well, to go off what Claypool points out is that like the liberal support, like where he the term that he coined that he didn't coin it, but I like where he says like the conservatives will win rural Saskatchewan and Saddam Hussein numbers. He'll say the same thing regarding like the liberal support could just be ballooning in like the island of Montreal and like Toronto and like Calgary, areas that were like already pretty liberal anyways. So that's where I'm kind of thinking like maybe it's the liberals who win the popular vote this time, but the conservatives win more seats. Like it's not looking that way if you look at the majority of the polls at all. But it's not to say there's also that like shy conservative voter. Like the conservatives aren't always easy to poll. Plus a lot of young people, and you know the second biggest conservative voting bloc in Canada, I believe, is the Hindu population. And so I mean, and to be honest, like most of the Hindus I know, it actually rings true. Like they're usually very hardworking individuals. So like most of them are very business mindset too. So when I heard that, I was like, that actually makes sense. Like not knowing much, not even just surface level thinking about that. So because I think I brought that up to the point that like I think a lot of people think that like most immigrants will just automatically favor the party that was in power when they got here. But it's not necessarily to say that you can actually rely on that like 100%. Like look what happened with Trump. Like he grew with the Latino vote this election. Like you know what I mean? Like unexpectedly, so to say, from a mainstream perspective.
Well,
But yeah, so,
I would imagine most immigrants are coming from societies that are vastly more conservative than here. So they're going to a lot. I mean, when you come with traditional values, their mind's not going to easily wrap around these like bizarre climate goals and transgender this. So I can't
mm-hmm.
imagine that's the case. But you did mention polls, and I did want to bring up that I actually was, I can't remember the name of the poll company, Abacus. Abacus, which I've heard that name before, so they're out there in the polling world. They called me on the phone, and I was expecting a call because I never answer the phone. So I
Okay.
answered the phone, and then out
It
of
wasn't a
like,
scam, which is already a win.
it wasn't a scam, and they said the right word because there's only a few like nanos, abacus. There'd only be a few that I would even recognize that I knew it was what. So
Was it a robot?
no, it was a human being.
Okay.
So I will say first off, the human being didn't care about my answers. They were paid to make me answer one of their four options for each question so they could just neatly in a box check A, B, C, or D. So there was no room for nuance in any of your answers. So it was kind of comical because I found none of the questions easy to answer, but I played along to,
If I may, was it
yeah,
like A, B, C, D, strongly agree, disagree,
those
strongly
type,
disagree?
those types of things. I would never do that. I might do that.
That's the only way you can really do that. I just wanted to clarify for like
Yeah,
the
yeah,
people trying to
absolutely,
conceptualize it out
absolutely.
there who haven't been.
So
I've never been
those
told, so this is
that
interesting to
that
me.
was more along the lines of that type of gradient. Um, all the questions that they asked me were like very normal questions that you would expect. Were you likely to vote for this person, not likely to vote for that person, or who of the four people, if I say this statement, who of the leaders is most likely the best at this particular thing? And then, there's those types of questions. What I thought was interesting though was there was like four oddball questions that were all like Trump related. So they were all like all the other ones made perfect normal Canadian sense. Like, is your greatest concern affordability? Is your greatest concern this thing?
Then they were
Whatever.
very convoluted, I'm assuming.
Yeah, and then there was these like very black and white questions about Trump, like Trump's, is he the scariest thing ever, or is he this other thing, or like I wish I could remember, and I wish I could wrote them down because I could only remember, which was maybe useless to anyone, but it just seemed that there was this like really odd fixation on an odd number of questions that seemed like they had been added. Like someone like the other questions all seemed to flow with the style and similar this and that.
Almost
And
like
then
the
it was
poll
like,
was those three questions, and the
oh
other
man.
ones were just to like,
Or like
don't let
every year they've asked those other questions, and then just in the last
there.
few, like the last few minutes, they were like, oh, well, and tack on
Which would
these.
make sense if you were a polling company. There'd probably be the standard boilerplate, and then
Yeah,
the update thing,
for
like what's
sure.
going
And
on now.
I'm not implying anything sinister was happening. I'm just saying it was a
Oh,
very
we're taking it in.
Trump focused. There was a lot. I wouldn't say it was very Trump. A lot of Trump focused stuff. So I thought that was the only
Well,
thing really of note.
that's pretty cool. Like as far as like, I mean, it's a poll, so it's like really not actually cool. But like the fact that we were saying like, who are these people getting polled, and like, holy, here we go. You're now in it. Now
Well,
we're.
and also to your point where you said where conservatives don't want to answer, like
Mm-hmm.
my first response was like I wanted to give fake answers on every answer.
It's
Like that's
fun.
my yeah, where or like I don't trust who these people. What are they?
Yeah,
And then
you're
I
lying, so
decided,
I'm lying. Whatever.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But I decided to answer truthfully, like if I were to vote, who I would most likely vote for, and I played along with the process. Again, not I don't want to say what I said about anything because every answer is nuanced, and these weren't asking for nuanced answers. They were asking for very cut and dried answers.
Was it biased in to an extreme sense that all it were any of the questions were like, what is your thought of Trump, that he's like super terrible, just terrible, kind of terrible, mostly terrible? Like this was it that biased?
I won't say I remember it that way. I would say it was more of like
Okay, it
again
should.
my vibe. Here's this sensible poll, and then here's these like oddball Trumpy questions chucked in here. But the nature of their presence is the bias, right? Because all of a sudden you don't have a bunch of questions about something that's not to be feared and is scary. So the very presence of them is the bias, whether they're sort of innocuous or not. But they weren't what you're suggesting. But
No, no, no.
they
I
were
wasn't even suggesting. I was just inquiring.
yeah, or they weren't what you're requiring. They weren't that out there. But in answer to, because I've always said, like, who are these people that get polled? Also, that young fella that you were speaking of just moments ago, he was talking about conservatives in general are at work, don't take phone calls, don't answer. There's a lot of things that skew against conservatives when it comes to polls. That
Or
seems
like
to be
protests.
traditionally.
Even protests, it's like these people got to go to work, but the freeloaders who want more money, they're all off all day. They'll just, anyway.
Yeah,
Sorry, yeah, exactly.
yeah. That's the
I'm
idea. I mean, whatever that means is whether that's true or not. But I did think that it was a fun experience to try to be
no,
to be an official poll person for the first
well,
time.
that does help me. It's kind of interesting that it does actually lead into the next topic that I just wanted to touch on from the Canadian media, which was the 51st state stuff was running hot again through all the media outlets.
I've been
Trump,
making a lot of calls behind the scenes, getting it
I,
fired up again. So
I didn't want to say anything, and I was just hoping. I thought maybe I was like, is
yeah,
this
yeah,
Jay's like handiwork in
wow,
the background, really getting things in the motion going?
absolutely.
Um, well, that's awesome. Like I think our 4 or 5 members will be happy to hear that the tide is shifting like we've hoped. Keep on chugging. But it basically, again, to one of your earlier points about how boring Canadian politics are. The big hot button issue today is like Mark Carney getting caught lying about his first phone call with Donald Trump. And doesn't that just sound boring? Like just that sentence that I just said right there. It's just like, what? He's in hot water. So he misrepresented the call. And like, since his whole campaign, this is what I've kind of gathered, since his whole campaign runs off of like Trump bad, Carney good, um, it's a big deal because like supposedly like because supposedly from what I'm gathering, he came out off that call and told everybody like, look, I kept Donnie in his line. He respected our national sovereignty when I was talking to him, and it's stuff like this you can expect from me after the election when I go back down there to do the trade deal.
I got
Um,
it.
But so supposedly Donald was like, "Hey, new governor, like when are you coming to join?" Like, not obviously that, but more or less from the and he's getting in trouble for it, and everyone's dunking on him. And I think again, I'm assuming to you this is stupid and boring, right? Right?
Well, this is not so bad.
No, but it is to me too. My point is I think to that like uh the person who's really only voting for Carney straight up out of hate for Trump, it might make 1 out of 10 of them be like, I'm not voting. It's not going to help them. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's I guess the best we can hope for. But I mean, I will have to say, if I have to take my hats off to whether it was by accident or intentional or just like things just happen, but the Liberal Party to completely change the dialogue of the you know the last 10 years, when Pierre's trying to the lost decade, like that just seems like, because he's been saying it for so long, like it's an old slogan that's lost its sting.
It's luster.
And the liberals have been able to paint this like Trump enemy narrative, and it seems to have worked. With like the people are literally like no recollection of the last. It's like Men in Black. They held up that Trump stainless steel Trump stick with the red light and just blinked out the entire, or a good chunk of the entire Canadian population. That's what it
What?
seems like has happened. And there's like a little bit of talk, and I know you're talking about Carney lied. I mean, that's all he does is lie, and or come from things from a I don't want to call him I don't know. I don't know what he's doing, but it doesn't
Oh, I don't want to call him a liar. Like, don't send the police after me, Mr. Carney, please.
I'm not so worried about that. I'm just
I'm just being a joker.
trying to give him the benefit of the doubt, but untruths or whatever, his supporters don't hear it. If they hear it, they don't believe it. So like it's immaterial. It's all these little things are immaterial. Like
Well,
we're all siloed, so to speak.
very
So
true, but I think everything it's kind of almost like an iceberg into like a mountain. Like, yeah, it's slow and steady, but like it's I know it's the elections in 4 days, so we can't just have like little trickle. But I think his whole campaign has been a constant trickle after that fluff 15-point lead poll that came out right away, which is just like a fugazi if you've ever seen a fugazi. And the leader of that, I think Abigus polling, like kind of called that out today on Twitter. He pointed out that like if you like, because the liberals are like, and the conservatives are supposedly like within two now, and he's like, if you think he just basically called it all fluff. So I don't know. I do think that it's a knife fight, and if Mr. Claypool is right that liberals are gaining in areas where they were already winning, because again, too, another thing he points out that I don't know if we brought up, maybe we have on the show, but like a lot of the polls tend to favor demographics that would tend to lean liberal on average, whether that's older or female. Just so there's that also. Yeah, so it'll be. I don't think it's all lost. I also still think this is the real truth that another thing I kind of wanted to switch to on a greater level, like win or lose for the conservatives or the liberals. At the end of the day, we're still going to have like a huge division in Canada, regardless of who wins. And it seems like that's like the bigger monkey in the room that I guess people do talk about, but it's one of those issues that I think is so large that I personally like. I'm trying to think of like what the great uniter would be, and I honestly think like hardships really would probably be the only real true like. And I don't know, like that's really and not to sound depressing, but like the nation is pretty divided whether the liberals win or the Pierre wins, and I think that'll be a reckoning that we're gonna have to deal with.
absolutely. I mean, that
You
seems to
know,
be happening everywhere.
for sure.
There's a establishment versus populism, a
Well, even if
feminine
you
versus masculine. Uh,
environment, government, more or less. Do you disagree? Less taxes, more taxes. Immigration, is that enough? That's not enough. Like, and then even if you are both for more immigration, maybe he's for a higher number, so now you're divided. Even like everybody's just in there, like we're a bunch of cats. He's trying to herd a whole bunch of cats.
Yeah, and absolutely more and more fractured ideas and less social cohesion. There's
And, you
more
know,
other coming, and no one trusting anyone.
yeah, it
I don't
costs.
know what that looks like. Well, that kind of brings up last week we talked about what I thought was called Agenda 2040, which it's not Agenda 2040. Maybe we made the comparison like Agenda 2030,
You
these
were
dystopian
you
vision.
sound that way.
Yeah, well, I was excited about it, but I'm still excited about it. But what was funny is it's nothing to Agenda 2040 is something about clean water and fresh education for uh, children in Africa. But if you look, our last week's episode comes up third under Agenda 2040, but it has nothing to do with
So
that. What?
we are misinformation. We
Right.
are in
But
fact
but to take but to make it even worse, the article that you sent me was Disruption 2024, which is not the one that Pierre Polyev was speaking from. He was speaking from Disruption from Horizon Canada 2025 because I couldn't find his quotes. So first I was going to accuse him of misquote. Anyways, long story short, without boring you,
I sent you some
I
misinformation.
well, no, you sent me on the right track because I did find the
It was the right group. Yeah, I must have clicked the wrong link. My
yeah,
bad.
yeah, no big deal. But it was actually kind of interesting. Even I went through and completely read 2024, and 2025 is the same sort of recap. And basically, there's, if I'm going to sum it all up, it all comes down to the most, okay. So in 2024, they basically sent a survey out to like 500 industry leaders and whatnot. They had 500 people respond. So first of all, you could take that for whatever that's worth. It's 500 respondents, different
Now, but
industries and whatnot.
industry leaders. So we're talking like
Well,
the
they didn't qualify. They didn't qualify, but it's Canadian, so let's give them the benefit of the doubt. They got a good cross sampling and good participation rate for some industry leaders, political leaders, social environment, whatever. So I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. Then they basically had um, the questions they teased out. What was interesting about it going through it, it was still an excellent exercise. And I mean, the idea that we would take this and immediately jump to fear is
natural.
maybe a little, well, it's natural, but it's also a little bit, well, no, I don't even mean that. I mean the report itself, not what it says. The people jump to like, oh, the government has a report about this, that, or the other thing. Therefore, that's what the government's planning. This is way more about, hey, what can we all see coming down the road? And if we were to see these things coming down the road, how should we prepare ourselves for them? That's a big difference than this is what the government's planning, like WEF style. Like
Hmm. Oh,
Polyev
absolutely.
was right. This is like sensible government,
Well,
you
if I
know.
may, to defend Pierre for a second, I think he was bringing it up in the perspective of like this guy's own government is saying this is what we're on pace for. So
No,
like
no,
maybe less than that. Like
I'm not
what do we?
slag, I'm not slagging Pierre. I'm just
I
saying people themselves, when they hear about these reports, it's very easy for people to make. I watched a bunch of them videos that people did make. It's reported as, ooh, this is what the government's planning for us, right?
for sure
But this is basically just good old fashioned strategic assessment planning, what could happen in the
analysis.
future.
Yeah,
But basically, it was all about social breakdown, people distrusting the media. They had three metrics. The metrics was how high the impact would be of this event if it were to happen, over what time frame it may happen over, and how impactful it would be. And essentially, the top one that that's on the near horizon in the 3-year window is that people can't distinguish between information and misinformation and disinformation. And that was the biggest concern and the most immediate
Thank
concern.
God. Thank God that's 3 years away.
That's 3 years away. This
Thank
is
God.
exactly, yeah.
That's
And then,
woo. We got a
four
great
years
plan.
away is cyber attacks, just 4 years away. 5 years away was billionaires taking over everything and running the economy. Basically, the list of everything they had, like the siloing of information, the, no longer considering post secondary education as a viable response. Owning a home is not a realistic goal. The only way to wealth is to have intergenerational wealth, a complete disillusion with no aspirations and expectations. Artificial intelligence replacing the labor. I mean, they're putting all these out there as these are coming in the future. But to me, every single one of the ones that I was reading is like, it seems to be happening like already now. Like, forget 3 years from now or 4 years or five. Like, they're talking about the Canadian economy could shrink and become less predictable. Okay, it seems pretty shrinky and pretty unpredictable. People's mental health will suffer. Workers may seek greener pastures elsewhere. They're talking about, immigrants returning. I looked up like 120,000 people or some odd, like, high net wealth, high educational earners like exited Canada last year, like double, almost triple up from like a decade ago. So that's already happening. This was what caused all the kerfuffle. This was the big areas. People might find alternative ways to meet their basic needs. So the first one was housing, food, childcare, and healthcare cooperatives may become more common. This could ease burdens on social service, but also challenge market-based businesses. So basically, the challenge to the system is, in the absence of a system, like the church and other charity groups, they may swoop in to help the people who've been abandoned by the system. And then they're basically saying that would be bad because it would also make it impossible to make money with the commercial ventures offering the same services. So then they also talked about forms of person to person exchange of goods and service would become even more popular, like talking about like marketplace and these other buy sell places, reducing tax revenue. That's but I like this, what they throw on the end. Oh, don't worry about the tax revenue that we're going to lose. It's and consumer safety. So they're nice. They're making sure we're safe. But so their big concern is that people will just start trading and bartering with each other, and then the tax revenue will decrease. People may start to hunt, fish, and forage on public lands and waterways without reference to regulations, and small scale agriculture could increase. So, again, these are all bad things, apparently. And then it says the last part, this is what I love. Governments may come to seem irrelevant if they cannot enforce their basic regulations, or if people increasingly rely on grassroots solutions to meeting their basic needs. So that was where he was talking about people killing squirrels in the park and other people talking about that kind of thing. Like, uh, that was what that section was highlighted. But I thought at a close read, I thought that was pretty interesting because basically every single one of the things they were concerned about is a return to a basic way that we all used to live, like helping each other for no money, like sharing, reusing, and recycling things amongst each other, but with no taxes being paid on these, whatever.
But think of the
And
bureaucrats, Jay.
yeah, well,
Think
think
of
of
the
consumer
bureaucrats.
safety. You can't have Aunt Annie's jam; you might get a tummy ache. So we can't have that going on.
Yeah, we're not accounting for it in our carbon metrics.
So, and then you jump down another couple of sections, 3.6 section, it was like people may reject systems they believe have failed them. People work hard but see little reward, may look for others to blame. Some may blame AI, big tech, CEOs, social. I mean, but you think of all this is already happening. People are complaining about jobs, AI, big tech, oligarchs, running the government now, CEOs. Ooh, Mangione, they're killing that guy on the street. Everybody's loving it. lighter regulations, tax penalties, profound revisions of certain systems. Some are going to blame the state, but basically, all of these concerns of Horizons Canada are like essentially the whole of society is going to break down. That's basically what we have to look forward
Well, I say we all just become poets.
to. Well, that you may have no choice. Also, I don't know if you remember a few weeks or months ago, they were also talking about a there was an RCMP top secret report, and the RCMP also predicted the same sort of if the
Mhm.
social inequality had
Keeps going.
that keeps going, that there's going to be essentially these same kinds of things.
Well, that one was more about immediate. Like, it's going to be messy. People are going
Well,
to.
this is, I mean, they're already talking about this. I mean, this is, some of these things are 3, 4 years away. And then they also had a section of it where if X happens, how likely is YZQ to happen? Like, not only are these things can be not just single dominoes, right? Like they can be,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's
It's.
not like one of them happens at a time, right? And
I got.
they were also, and it was very interesting because they were like in conjunction with this. I saw an International Monetary Fund report talking about how, like, they're saying, like, flat out, the numbers are that we need to push back. You know, they weren't saying it as frankly as I'm saying it. They were saying it like, 70 is the new 50, and you should keep working till you're 70, and the cognitive function of a 70-year-old is the same as what it was in the 50s of a 50-year-old. And oh, by the way, if to meet the reduced working population, and we need more tax revenue essentially. And oh my God, if people don't keep working, the whole system's going to collapse. Is basically what it was saying in nice flowery language. And they were saying governments, well, 100% need to push back retirement benefits to. And I just think about this, like, picture the people like where we live without being specific where we live, and look at these people already in their 60s. And I mean, they're incapable of continuing to work for most of the jobs where you need to be on your feet. I mean, this is a nice idea if you're maybe an architect and you sit at your drafting table 6 hours a day, 3 days a week, and your juniors
Well,
do.
or your Uber driver. Yeah. Um, you
Well,
are
you
right.
know
No.
that you have
Yeah.
family members who are aged, who are working hard because they're
Yeah.
not ready to retire, but they should be able to, based on what we used to think.
Yeah, no, I think they're more or less just telling you. Like, it's like kind of like they're warning, like, hey, like,
This is exactly what I'm saying. There's
things are gonna get
multiple
more expensive.
sources telling us things are going to be getting rough.
Well, there was a report I wanted to share with you because another one, if I may, another
Absolutely.
one of the liberal uh attacks like against the liberals this week has been them coming for people's home equity. There's $4.7 trillion in Canadian home equity, and the liberals apparently want some of that. Um, have you heard anything about this, my friend?
I
It's
heard,
kind of
yeah, I heard
so.
about this.
So the
Tell me
liberal
more.
government, commissioned this company called Get Squeezed, I believe. What is it called? Um, I'll just bring it up right here. No, it's not even. This is them right here. They are Generation Squeeze. My apologies. So essentially, they want to put a lid on rising house prices. Now, if you read what they write here, it does sound wishy-washy, and I could see how 18-year-old me would eat this up. Like just like they basically they think they see the problem as rising housing's rising higher than wages. So we need to help. We need to make housing like not an investment. We don't because people have it's a shadow investment that people are using, and they sound all wishy washy, and they got They got quite the catchphrases and they got quite a good backing behind them. But like I looked further into them. Basically, they want to do it over $1 million. They actually, let's show one of their graphs right here. Where's that? There's a pretty good one with like a little. Oh, it's this one right here. Yeah. Like so, yeah. So if you're zero, if you're $1 million or under, you zero increase. But if you're 1.1 million, it's only $100. So like everything, right? It doesn't sound that bad, and it's like, look, we're gonna raise 5 billion per year, and like again, my beef with most of this stuff is you guys already squandered the rest of that money that you still don't have. Like, what do you need another 5 billion for just to piss away? And if you look into it, it's like an NGO. This is kind of looks like one of those organizations that like Elon in the States with Doge is trying to cut funding for, because it seems to be like not a government agency, and they do a pretty good thing of trying to seem like impartial. Like they even have like a nice federal election guide here. Like they'll go over like where all the parties stand and tell you there. And if you read their stuff on it, you're not right away going to see who they're like one way or the other. Like they're kind of tough on everybody ish. But then when you listen to the guy speak that wrote that like report I just showed you, and like hear his like expose his mission statement, like the guy who started the non-for-profit, he's basically like the government of Canada. Like I saw him on the CPAC speech they had at the website, and he's like the government. He was mad at the government of Canada because like they were giving all this money to old people, and like not enough money to like young people to like help inequality, and like you obviously his remedy was certainly not cutting any money for the old people. It was definitely not the solution, right? Like so.
No, I don't know how their numbers are all going to add up. And I mean, Carney wants to add, what is it, $130 billion to the deficit or some number.
Yeah, and apparently the books close on the third, like at the end of April for the government of Canada, and like they're gonna have all this lost revenue for like the carbon tax money they had forecasted in there. So like the deficits are gonna be like way higher. And Carney's spending 140 billion more than Mr. Trudeau, and you're just like, again, I don't know. It just seems to be like down in an incinerator. Like I've seen as a Canadian citizen nothing but like no benefit from the increase in government in the last decade. Only incompetency, like lineups around passport offices. Economists at major bank warns of possible civil unrest over housing. CIBC's Benjamin Tal tells real estate forum affordability issues require urgent action.
Yeah, there's no end of any of it out
Well,
there.
right away, I'm looking at this guy's platform and I'm like, where does this guy stand on immigration? Because like that's clearly the elephant in the room with Canada. It's like you can't increase our population by X and only allow Y amount of houses. You know what I mean? Like obviously that's the factor for rents going up
Well,
all across.
this is what they're telling us in plain language. It seems like this Disruption Horizon Group, this economist, major bank economist, the RCMP, is they're saying we're getting to the point of serious trouble if the economy doesn't improve for your average person. And neither Carney nor Pierre have what it takes to make that happen. Again, people criticize Trump, but Trump's trying to do something. You could say right or wrong, doesn't matter, but he's trying something drastic. So again, his drastic solutions. I mean, I go look, I can find a lot of examples where he's winning, apparently, and manufacturing's pouring into the United States, even though we all recognize it will take a long time to set up and gain traction. And people have come to the table to make these deals. I don't know. It seems like the wheels turn so slow. It seems like it's like an illusion. It seems like the race cars are zipping around the track every day based on headlines and exaggerations and whatever. But then here we are. You know, we used to say it was, well, he's only been president for 100 days. And now, you know, we don't go farther ahead. And I mean, they were shelling
It's
Ukraine
like
or Kiev.
it,
It's like nothing's happening there. Nothing's, I mean, business as usual in Gaza. Same sort of tariffs on, tariffs off. They could get higher, they could go lower. RFK loves red dye, it's gone, but there's 30 dyes that'll make your kid autistic or full of
Ash and tampons, you
ADHD.
know, are the quietest you've seen them in 8 years. You're just like, yeah, like, where are you guys? I thought you're dumping stuff. Like, like nothing. Nothing is gonna happen. Like, welcome to business as usual.
That does seem to be business as usual. I mean, I'm looking forward to. I mean, I was I was excited when Trump got elected because he had the judiciary, he had the Senate, the Congress, the this. So if there's ever been a time in history, if you were skeptical about politics where something should be able to happen, I mean, I guess people could argue things are happening, but I don't know. I envisioned that they could happen more dramatically and faster. And I know that there's a million roadblocks keep getting thrown up,
No, but,
judicial
but
roadblocks.
his appointments too, right? Like you got Tulsi, you got RFK,
Oh yeah,
like,
dream
you
team.
got a bunch of firebrands in there, like
Uh,
unity from
I
like other sides of the party that came to join you. Like this is what the movie's all about. Like
yeah,
everyone came together.
I
Yeah.
thought there should be a flatbed going down 401 with the spacecraft on it from Roswell. Like we should all be taking a look. See, it should be
Take a
that's
look.
how.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
With the colonel handcuffed who's been hiding it all these years. You can throw a
yeah,
tomato at him for
exactly.
$5.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Fauci should be in the crow's nest, hanging at the intersection somewhere, or something should have happened. Epstein list, something, something. So, given that, all that I just said about the US of A and cowboy, apparently the so called cowboy Trump with his cowboy crew, what in here more moderate, chill, what's Pierre going to do? Like, even if he wins a majority, like, no one's going to turn the ship, right? The ship. Like, there's nobody. Like, I hate to be the guy who's like, and then I also wonder why. It's not that this brings me joy and this is what I want, but I do find it comical that your average Joe in the street who has, again, you could argue that it's like the liberals are doing the best they can in a declining situation. So you could even have this conversation and say, hey, considering the pandemic, considering global inflation, considering this, that, and the other thing, those liberals are doing the best job that you could ever really hope anybody could even do. But the fact that no one's talking about this like impending doom, whether it's our mismanagement of our resources, population collapse, job loss. I mean, just because people are just not smart enough to do basic work. And, and I'm not saying that as a slight. I'm just saying in the 1950s, a guy with an IQ of 80 could be a valuable general laborer and work with a shovel. But then now you got rid of those 60 guys because you have a backhoe, right? There's those jobs are gone. And now we're doing the same sort of thing with, and again, maybe now you used to have an IQ of 95 to be useful, and now it's going to be 105. And we're just increasing the percentage of the population who is basically functionally useless. And unless there's a backup plan for that chunk of people, it's not
Well,
like, oh, they'll learn to code,
yeah,
right?
but I would say the backup plan for
Barbara.
that chunk of people is kind of like, and again, to similar to even to Pierre, because I disagree. I think that I agree with you, like, but I do think there's a small chance that both Trump and Pierre could come in and tweak things. Again, I'm just a forever optimist, so I'm well aware it doesn't look good, with especially down south with like it's business as usual. But like you just got to deregulate, and for those dumb people, in my mind, it's kind of just like the beauty of being dumb is like you're happy with like, and you don't even know it. Like you might be so smart that like you're like you can see the volcano is gonna hit that guy if he builds his house there. But if he's dumb enough to do it and he really likes the house, then God, by God, before that volcano comes, he's gonna have a happy, joyous, like dumb life, and that's up to him, And I think if the government were to like lessen regulation, it would just help everybody. Like that's kind of one of the big keys, but I don't know. You are right. Like we are getting to that point, one of those points in life where a big chunk of the workforce goes bye-bye real fast.
It's already happening. And
Yes.
I see it everywhere around me here. I don't even know. Like I get resumes constantly. I mean, I couldn't employ these people. I don't even know what I could do to these people. Again, I'm not trying to be mean or I'm trying to be cool or whatever. I'm just saying, you know, 58-year-old Barbara who was front counter help for her whole life or whatever, no real computing skills, no real, her back hurts. She can't stand on her knees all day
Not
long.
by
And
2:30.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah,
you know what
yeah, yeah.
I mean, and again, and these people have real lives with real situations, and
No,
I'm
but then
being
there's Phil
sympathetic.
with the hearing aid, and like his back hurts too, and he was like
Yeah,
only a deckhand for 25 years. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and yeah, and all we need to do is Tom, who lays carpet. We need him to keep laying carpet into his 70s to fix these. But you said the solution is deregulation. I mean, one of the great things about this project, whatever 2025 Horizon Disruption Project, they basically claim that people will reject the system they believe has failed them. So basically, they're talking about that the state, it loses its legitimacy because it can't make sure that people are following the rules. So people just stop following the rules. So this solution will also get you mass deregulation. I mean, maybe not on paper, but in practice, right?
Agreed. No, agreed.
The inability to police every place.
Well, it sounds just like South Africa today, like more or
Absolutely.
less.
Basically, they say people will lose faith. The basic conclusion is people will lose faith in the Canadian project. They may reject policies that promote education, jobs, or home ownership. The usual levers may seem misguided and wasteful to those who have abandoned the idea of moving up. They could lose the drive to better themselves in their communities. Others might embrace radical ideas about restructuring the state, society, and the economy. But basically, they're underpinning the whole idea is that basically the glue that held society together was belief in social mobility. And even the belief of it seems to be enough to keep people in line. And if you take that away, I guess people
Well,
fall apart.
there's a famous quote that I am about to butcher, but it comes from like the 1800s, and it was something like from a European who was visiting America, and I think it was something he called Americans are like they're temporarily not millionaires. Like every American has this air about him, like he's not a millionaire just yet. Like, but
Yeah, yeah.
whereas like that wasn't kind of the way things were in Europe. Like people knew like and you hear about that even with accents in England and stuff like that, like the class system and stuff.
Class, yeah. Like here we're, I mean, I guess that is when people say the Canadian or the American dream, this notion, I think that's probably the gift to the world was this breaking of class structure in,
Yeah, it
I
doesn't
don't even
matter.
mean in the West, I mean the extreme newest West, the New World West, and not even in Central and Latin America because they have ridiculous classism down there. Like it's literally a Canadian and American phenomena, as far as I know. In the comments, anyone tell me someplace else that does it better? But yeah, you literally can be born here, the son of a legless beggar, and you'll walk around with your thumbs in your suspenders. You wait and see what happens.
You
What I'm
still
gonna
don't
do.
in department stores. Like it's not a zero sum chance. And I
Yeah,
think that's
there's
kind of like what that the report's saying is like, no, no, no. Europe's here, no more middle class. That was a blip. I think that's everything. I think that's something a lot of people don't even think about. Like the middle class, like obviously from our perspective, like I'm mad that the middle class is going away, as I should be, even though I was maybe just a member of the lower middle class, but like I was still the word middle class was in there. And I think what we don't realize, if you look back at history, the middle class is kind of like was a blip after World War II with like
absolutely.
all the Nazi inventions and like peace and Cold War and the all that stuff coming back. And the baby followed by the baby boom. So like, there was a variety of things that kind of, came behind it. So
It was a golden age, and in all of history, was nothing was like multi-generational people live in homes. I mean, our problem here in North America, we structured ourselves for a middle class. So we have middle class infrastructure, but no longer middle class salaries to pay for the infrastructure. At least if you're in the third world, where they have the very rich and the very poor. You can go live in accommodations that have been like they've been for a length of time that are affordable on low salaries. There's at least a place for you to go. Whereas in Canada and the United States, if you can't make it in your
You're
bracket, there's no, yeah, it's either, you pay $1,500 a month for a one bedroom apartment or you're homeless. There's no like, oh, I can pay 300 and live in this capsule. I mean, like I can do in Japan or Korea, or even those places with, high GDP and modern economies still have affordable. I mean, they may be small, they may be something, but at least they exist. Like I
yeah,
know
there's
those,
no
like,
cafe to
you know,
sleep in.
yeah, and I know that maybe you get a chain link bunk bed made out of plywood in, Mumbai or wherever, but at least there's a place with a roof on it that you can go in behind your chain link and you can sleep inside at some price.
Yeah, in Canada, you're getting arrested on your chain link bunk bed. Like, whoa, that's not up to code, buddy. You
Yeah,
trying to
exactly.
die?
So
Yeah.
we can't have middle class infrastructure without middle class income. Like it's a different scenario here. Like I maybe this is a fantasy, but I see the like Greece with the nice weather all year long and generational properties that are, they're a little bit run down, but what would be a good Greek name? Um,
Davos?
Dimitri. Yeah, Dimitri can go. He's 38 years old and never married, never really had a full time job, and works part time here and there, does whatever, and then basically slings a hammock in the shed of the corner of the property with a couple of pallet walls, and it's actually charming when the weather's nice, right? He
Hmm.
walks down to the Adriatic and and goes to the
Yeah,
clubs at
four
night.
seasons. 4 seasons and poor sucks. Because you
Yeah,
gotta have
it's
like
it's
all this different
awesome.
gear. It's like, no, you're poor. Like, and my place has to be insulated. Like, it's really. Whereas if you're just poor on the beach, life
Better.
is life is not that terrible. Like, if you're poor at the beach with shade, whoa, watch
You've
out.
got a chance. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't mean to revel in the and sit here like a grinning Cheshire cat about. It just seems to confirm. I mean, I'm putting my money where my mouth is. I'm building off grid, so this is something that I've been envisioning down the pipe for a while, that there's going to be a little bit, the numbers just don't work, and there's going to be societal hardship. And I'd rather be in a position where I don't live downtown Toronto and pay $4,000 a month for an apartment.
Well, Jay, I support that. I have a couple of small points I'd like to bring up before we wrap up our show here.
Sure.
Did you hear about the goings on at the World Economic Forum this week?
Like Mr. Schwab Klaus stepped down, and then he's been accused of fraud after.
That's correct. Yeah, the Wall Street Journal reported that. And I mean, I'm sure we've all seen it, and I think it must have just been after a surgery because I've seen other pictures of the guy, but the guy replacing him, he's the former CEO of Nestle. His
Yeah, he's
name is
the
Peter
water.
Breck Letterman or something, and he looks like if we thought Klaus Schwab was a Bond villain, this guy, like I think I've seen pictures where the eye's normal, so he must have just had some surgery or something, because he kind of reminds me of the villain from Last Action Hero.
Well, it's
And
funny you should say that. I saw that guy's picture today, and the top comment underneath, because you got to love the comment section. It said, "Satan ain't even trying with his disguises anymore."
oh, too good, too good.
Yeah, yeah.
I got
So I did see that. And he's the guy who said that no human, like,
water's not a
water
right,
water's not a human, like
not a
a
right.
free
Yeah,
water's not a human right.
yeah. You will buy it from
So
my bottle. Another one, Mark Carney, on a note of Groundhog Day again to end that Canadian politics update. 2 points. Mark Carney is cursing the Edmonton Oilers. They are 0-2 to the Kings, and Carney keeps cheering for them. So the Leafs seem to be 2-0. So
didn't
thankfully, he's
didn't he
not saying
do
anything about
didn't didn't he do a skate with them?
He
Carney did
did,
escape.
and then Connor McDavid and the other guy were like out for a week. Next night, it was like the start of the curse. They got injured or
And,
something.
and you saw his lame wrist shot that missed the net, open
Yeah,
net.
it kind of reminded me of that American politician riding the tank, like just looking like a dweeb, like kind of like. And the last thing on a note of like this, I'm going to end on a good note for Pierre Poilievre fans out there. I went a little outside of a normal wheelhouse, and I touched in on what the astrologers were saying about the Canadian election today.
Ooh, oh,
Yeah,
I like this.
and the video I watched, basically, Buddy went over Carney's chart and Pierre's chart, and it's not looking good for Mr. Carney. And it is
Really?
kind of, yeah, it bodes well. So supposedly there's like, for Pierre, there's like some house of like royalty that he'll be sitting in, which is like leads to positions of power and strength and leadership, or whatever. I don't even know. And then like Mr. Carney, it's like he's got Jupiter, but it's in this other house. But the house that Jupiter's in, it's a house of contemplation or something. So
Classic.
yeah, classic astrology. You know, they zingers, and they were just calling it like they saw it, and it kind of reminded me of like when the witches couldn't cast a spell on Trump because he had a protection around him. They were saying so. Any news is good news. I just thought you might like to hear
Well,
that.
I'm glad you looked into that. I mean,
YouTube
we
suggested it. I did not go
we
hunting.
we don't do enough. I don't know if we dip in our toe enough into the esoteric on this show or not, but maybe in future shows we can plumb the depths or climb the heights of all of that stuff.
Yeah, variety of topics, whatever's interesting. I can't wait for this election to end so we can talk about like astrology
Well,
all
that's
the
what
time.
we'll tell people next Monday night after the election, starting at 9 o'clock our time, but we won't tell you where we are. We're going to be putting out a show about the election, recapping right away. Also, please like and subscribe and all that stuff that I always forget to ask about. And, it helps see out. Comment down below something you'd like us to talk about. To our one fan who's made it to the 56th minute, thank you very much. And we'll
Sure.
see you Monday night. Good night.
Night, everybody. Wow!